Do we have free will? Well, I think that most of us would agree that we do. For example, I can do that. I had a milkshake for breakfast because I felt like it. Well, if you've ever picked up the Bible, you'll know that it's a book filled with examples of people wrestling with how to exercise their free will. To eat meat offered to idols or to not to? That is the question. But biblical choices are typically more complex than deciding what or what not to eat for dinner. In fact, they're often a matter of life and death. And the Bible first describes these choices with the imagery of two trees. The Bible story opens with the first humans in a garden, and they're told that they could eat freely of all the trees in the garden, including the tree of life. This tree was unlike any other. It could bring healing, wisdom, and of course, life to anyone who ate from it. But elsewhere in the garden, on the way to the tree of life, was another tree, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And of this tree, Adam and Eve were explicitly told not to eat of it, because if they did, they would surely die. In other words, it was the opposite to the tree of life. While the one tree brings healing and life, the other tree brings mortality and death. This was the first opportunity humans had to exercise their free will, and the choice was simple. Either eat of the tree of knowledge and die, or eat of the tree of life and live. Who wouldn't choose the tree of life? But Adam and Eve were tempted by the prospect of becoming like gods, and being able to make their own choices about what was good and evil. And so they made the wrong choice. They ate from the tree of knowledge, and as a result, were cursed to mortality and death. Upon eating from the tree, they were exiled from the garden, and God placed a cherubim with a flaming sword to keep the way to the tree that provided life. Adam and Eve were stuck looking at the garden from the outside in. What's interesting is that keeping the way to the tree of life doesn't imply blocking off the way forever. The Hebrew word that's translated as keeping is the same as the word used for when Adam and Eve kept the Garden of Eden, which implies that this cherub was keeping or protecting the way so that it could be accessed later. So this was only a temporary obstacle that would one day be removed for those who were worthy to eat from it. But what's the big deal with this tree and man's choice in the garden? And why does the Bible use two trees to paint a picture of life and death, of choices and consequences? Well, it all comes down to what each tree represents. When the serpent tempted Eve to eat of the forbidden tree, the tree of knowledge, he said, "God doth know, eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil." So the tree of knowledge represents man's desire to be like God, to make their own choices. It's a way of life that decides to put self above God and do what we feel like doing. And of course, when humans do what they feel like doing, that leads to sin and death. When it comes to the tree of life, the Bible talks about this tree as if we should know exactly what it means, but it's never directly explained, and it's mentioned very infrequently. So if you trace its appearances throughout the scripture, you'll find that in Genesis, it's painted as this reward for obedience. In Proverbs, it's compared to righteousness, wisdom, and healing. And in Revelation, both of those ideas are combined, and it's described as this reward that heals. So actually, the symbol of the tree of life is very consistent throughout scripture, and its message is specific. It's the reward for choosing obedience to God and overcoming sin. The tree of life is God's symbol of the choice that he gives to mankind, and the reward that he offers to those who choose to obey him. So when we come across these trees in Genesis, or even anywhere in the Bible, this is what's being told to us. We have a choice to obey God or not to, but we cannot do both of those. And depending on the choice we make, the result is life or death. And this theme is consistent throughout the Bible. For example, Moses painted the same picture for Israel when he begs them to follow God at the end of his life. Israel's on the edge of the promised land, and Moses says to Israel, "I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore choose life, that both thou and thy seed may live, that thou mayest love the Lord thy God, and that thou mayest obey his voice, and that thou mayest cleave unto him. For he is thy life." The Bible's final reference to the tree of life is found in the last chapter of Revelation. It says, "Behold, I come quickly, and my reward is with me, to give every man according as his work shall be. Blessed are they that do his commandments, that they may have right to the tree of life, and may enter in to the gates of the city." So that's the tree of life, a symbol of humanity's simple choice between life and death. The thing is, though, once we decide which choice to make, there's still a lot to learn about how that choice will influence our life. And so, if you're interested in learning more about what God expects from those who choose life, make sure to watch this video right here.